Hello everyone. Today I'm going to share an event which is hosted by Microsoft, and it is completely their promotion, which is regarding data preparation for innovations. So in which like which is basically related to understanding the live data and different data storage, uh, like I would like to invite you all if someone joins. Yeah. Let me check as well. Okay. So hi, my name is Piyush, and I'm going to coordinate this live event, which is designed and developed by Microsoft. And in this is basically for those who are data scientists or data science enthusiasts who want to explore new platform, which is Microsoft Fabric. And with the use of this Microsoft Fabric, they can do multiple stuffs and bring lots of thing in simplicity in their life. So like let me share my screen so that you can take a brief of this. I'm sharing my screen. I hope you can see this right now. So we are going to see this Microsoft Fabric. Okay, you can get this Microsoft Fabric account. Okay, and with the use of this beautiful, like not beautiful, but very efficient platform, which is going to help you in order to do business intelligence work with the use of Power BI, and also it will be very useful in live data streaming and data activator. You can bring lots of industrial solution and do a lot of real-time intelligence, as well as you can manage the data warehouse. Above all, you can do data engineering projects where you can integrate with and stream the data with different sources, as well as you can do this data science where you can design and develop machine learning models. You can train them, publish them, and use those in a production. Okay, so let's see this. Uh, like I'm going to use this. Synopsys data science. Okay, here you can see that you can build your own task flow. You can do some basic data analytics and data analytics with the SQL. You can use this medallion model, which provides you, like, it's a three-layer architecture, which helps you to clean the data, which is silver, gold, and platinum. So like diamond, with the use of that, you can create, and also you can create machine learning model. You can do experiments with machine like this notebook. Okay, so moving ahead. Right now, I'm stopping the screen and taking you through some other. Um, yeah, so it's about to come. Okay, so Mr. Ziva AKR, who is going to. So I have been invited in this link, this event, and I am sharing that event with you guys.
everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Innovate with the AI Azure Bootcamp. My name is Jiva, and I lead the Cloud Scale Analytics business unit at Microsoft. And I wanted to provide a little bit of background on who I am. My pronouns are he and him. And I'm actually joining you all from Cleveland, Ohio. And I'm actually wearing a black colored shirt. And I have been working at Microsoft for about 4 years. And as I mentioned to you, my charter and my team's charter is to drive the revenue and market share for all Azure Analytics portfolio. So we know that AI has been on fire, and most of our customers have been embracing AI for various different use cases. In fact, within Microsoft, we have seen that this is a publicly available information that more than 35,000 customers who are actually using AI today for various different use cases. They are all in different phases. They are experimenting with it, they're adapting it, and some of them are actually in scaling phases as well. But one of the most fundamental questions that we are trying to come across, a common denominator across all these 35,000 customers, is that we all constantly hear about get your data ready for AI. But when we ask that, what do we really mean when we tell them? What do we ask the customers to do to get their data ready for AI? And that is precisely the conversation that I'm actually going to have with you all in the next 30 to 35 minutes time. So what I'm planning to share here is that learning across all the customers with all the interactions that I personally had an opportunity to listen to listen to all the challenges that the customers faced while they're actually adapting and scaling AI, number one, and also about what is the perfect architecture that helps the customers to bring scalability in creating a scalable AI across their entire organization. So with that context in mind, I would like to talk to you about this. So there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever about the adoption of AI. I think we can safely say that in the last 14 to 15 months' time, we have gone past the hype curve when it comes to how customers are actually embracing AI at this point in time. In fact, Microsoft is actually no different either. As much as all of our customers are actually innovating with AI, all technologies for all the last 20 years, I have never ever seen such a pace of innovation happening within the company like the way it is actually happening in the last 15 months' time. Literally, there is no service within Azure or in the entire Microsoft that has been untouched by AI. In fact, if you look at all the Microsoft cloud services that we have, from infrastructure to data and AI to digital apps and innovation, modern work, security, and business applications, I'm pretty confident that all of you would have actually heard about the Copilot and how Copilot is actually being integrated into every one of these services in the entire stack within Microsoft. And based on all the initial customer results and feedback that we have seen, it is clear that every single dollar that our customers invest in AI, they're experiencing about 4 times the return. And the average time to get to the return is about 14 months' time. But we know that we are in a one-way traffic when it comes to putting our ambitions and also expectations on these two metrics. Of course, we want you to get 10x the revenue, 10x the ROI for every single dollar. And of course, we don't want you to wait for 14 months when you think about how you can actually get the ROI. So if we want to address all these things, it is super clear about what are the things that we need to go after when it comes to addressing the challenges. Number one, it comes down to the use cases. So if you look at all the 35,000 customers, predominantly all the use cases that we have seen our customers embracing AI for are all based on the industry standard use cases that we have seen, which is predominantly focused on semantic search, content and code generation, and summarization of all the content that they have in their environment. But if you look at how they're actually applying AI, this will give you an insight about the challenges that most of you actually face. All these experimentations are being done in a very siloed environment in different parts of the organization. on different data sets that they personally have in their own internal organization itself. So we know that AI works very well when you are actually working with a single copy of data. And this is precisely why we have been talking about get your data ready for AI. But in the reality, what we have actually seen is that most of the customers are actually embracing AI, applying Gen AI use cases on diverse data estate. And diverse data estate in the context of is that it is made up of multiple on-prem across multiple geographies and primarily made up of legacy data systems built on legacy architecture with the extensive system integration work. We know that there is no such thing as actually called data gravity because on an average, we find that our customers have about 800 copies of the same data sets that are actually floating around within the same organization. Now, if you want to really build the whole, create if you want to really create a scalable environment for creating a sustainable impact with your AI investments, we know that it is actually better off doing it on a strong data foundation built on cloud infrastructure. So what we really mean by that is that it's very important that you need to have the context about how we have actually gotten here. So we know that most of our customers in the last 10 years' time have invested a significant amount of their money as part of the digital transformation initiatives. And that was a key term in the last 10 years' time. As part of all the digital transformation investments, most of the money that customers actually invested went to modernizing the app environment. But if you think about it, the app level has a completely different level of maturity with the embracing technologies like all the microservices and the DevOps as a de facto development methodologies. But if you look at the underlying data and the data infrastructure, they are still sitting on legacy architectures built up on legacy systems put together with extensive system integration work. So now all this infrastructure that we have inherited over a period of last 30 years kind of actually worked for us because all that we ran in this entire data estate environment is operational reporting. Operational reporting focused on yesterday, last week, last month, last quarter, and last year. But we know that in the last 15 months' time, our world has tremendously changed with the advent of AI. Now that every single one of our customers are actually embracing AI, we personally believe within Microsoft, based on our own telemetry, we expect that more than 50% of the enterprise analytical environment is going to support real-time use cases and AI ML applications consuming data directly from the data platform. So what gotten us here until today will not help us to prepare the organization for future needs of the organization, which is going to be focused on real-time analytics and AI ML applications consuming data. So from that standpoint, now let's look at the second concept about it. So until now, that most of the customers, if you look at all the customer conversations that I personally have had, I had the privilege of meeting about nearly 100 plus customers. There are three primary things that they are trying to solve for when they are looking at and modernizing their entire data estate. So just like the example that I mentioned about, your app world is in a completely different level of maturity, but the underlying data and the data infrastructure is in a completely different level of maturity. And the entire focus for all of our customers is to get up to the same level of maturity where your app world is in. In fact, one of our GSIs actually did a paid survey across all Fortune 1000 customers. And the survey was focused on what is going to be the next 2 years of investment that the customers would be making. And 33% of them said that they are going to continue to make investment in progressing the AI technology across the entire organization and focused on scaling. But a whopping 60% of the customers responded that they want to use this as an opportunity to create the necessary building blocks to create a scalable AI to bring a sustainable impact in their entire organization. So from that standpoint, if you think about what are the building blocks? What are the critical building blocks that our customers are looking for? It comes down to these three challenges that they are trying to address as part of the data estate modernization. Number one, it is actually the heart of it is the infrastructure simplification. Like I presented earlier, that we have inherited. Data estate is something that we have inherited over a period of last 30 years time. And all that we did was to just keep adding one block over another with the extensive stitch together with the extensive system integration work. And data latency was never the theme anytime when we actually worked on our data infrastructure. Now we know that for every single on-prem technology that is made up, makes up for data estate, we have an equivalent cloud services that is actually available. And if all that we are going to do is to migrate all those on-prem assets to cloud, basically we are actually going to commit ourselves to migrating all the legacy architecture to the cloud. And this is an ideal opportunity for us to step back and think about how we can actually modernize the entire data estate by eliminating different redundant systems so that you can achieve simplicity and, more importantly, the data latency, because the data latency is going to be critical for all of us when we are trying to prepare our organization for future needs, which is focused on real-time analytics and AI ML applications consuming data. So infrastructure simplification is the topmost priority for every single one of our customer. At the heart of that is all about removing the data latency. Now, the second most important thing is about data liquidity, which is about how ready is your data for AI or for analytics or for your business users. We know that on all of the customer conversations that I have personally had, always started with, Jeeva, we are a data-rich information poor organization. And I'm pretty confident most of you are not any different from the reality that I just presented. So if the problem is that if we are not getting value out of the data that we already have today in our infrastructure, how good is it going to do to bring more data into our infrastructure from all the edge environment? And if we have challenges in empowering businesses with a seamless access to data without compromising the enterprise requirements like security and governance, then this is going to be a massive challenge as we move forward as well. Because we know anytime when we are talking about AI, we need to think about training the model or applying the AI model on a single source of truth. So data liquidity is the number 2 challenge that every single one of our customers are trying to address. Number 3 is federating the data governance. Like I talked about, what used to be a single on-prem 10 years ago has evolved into multiple on-prem over multiple geographies, made up of multiple data systems, and most of our customers use multi-cloud too. So when you are having a data sprawl that spans multiple systems and geography, how do you have a singular view of all the data assets that you have within your organization so that, number one, you can actually classify all those data, map all the data, and then you can classify them. And unless you classify them, you can't apply any one of the policies either. So federating the data governance to have a singular view of all the data assets that you have across the entire organization is the number 3rd thing. Mm-hmm. So just to summarize, when we are talking about how do we actually prepare your data estate, modernize your data estate for AI needs, these are the 3 critical building blocks that we are trying to solve for. Infrastructure simplification, federating the data governance, and increasing the data liquidity. Those are the 3 principles that we can actually address. So we believe that based on all the work that Microsoft has actually done, both internally within Microsoft and also working with some really large-scale customers across various different industries, we believe that the architecture that we have actually come up with, which largely aligns with the principles of data mesh, works very well for large organizations. And in our fundamental principle, that foundation looks like made up of 4 core pillars, which is about the number 1 foundation is about governance, security, and compliance, a strong data foundation which provides the data gravity. And then the second most important thing is about how do you create a data management to empower different parts of the businesses that seamlessly provides access to all of the business users and all of the analytical applications and all of your AI applications without compromising your principles or the enterprise requirements like security, governance, and all that. And then finally, it is about how do you bring anyone who touches the data within your organization on a single layer, which is about from the time a data engineer touches the data, all the personas who touches the data, from data engineer to AI developer, everybody is working on the same platform on the same set of copy. And if our data foundation can actually help you to address these three critical issues, I think we can actually move the maturity curve within your organization towards empowering your organization for a seamless adoption of scalability of AI in a massive way. So number one goal, as I mentioned to you, is about that how do you empower your AI organization and AI initiatives? So with the same set of foundation, whether your customer, whether your different businesses within your organization, whether they are actually doing a model customization and tuning work, leveraging models as a service across all of these different sets of model families, and then whether or otherwise they are actually doing an AI orchestration or simply leveraging pre-built capabilities, all of this has to happen seamlessly on the same Azure Data Foundation. Now, when you look at the data foundation, as I mentioned to you, that most of the customers that we have seen using it is they're embracing AI for industry standard use cases that they have actually come across. But in our belief that you are actually going to have an exponential increase in business value when you are actually trying to automate AI use cases based on the insights that you are actually going to get from your own data. And if you can actually get to this virtual cycle that your data produces all the insights that the business users need, and then you automate that through the AI, and that is going to be the future of how the companies are actually going to scale AI across the entire organization. Now, let's take a look at how we can actually get to that point. So if you think about it, as I mentioned to you in the beginning itself, that it is the foundation that is primarily made up of all four layers. And the core principles that I have actually talked about is that any persona who touches the data should be working on the same data sets within the same infrastructure, which means that all the AI personas who is working on the data and all the analytics and the data personas, from data engineering to data scientists, everybody should be working on the same platform. And then the most important thing is that anytime when we talk about leveraging a data foundation, we should not forget the business users who are sitting across multiple parts of the business. The most important thing is that the most successful organizations who are actually implementing AI today and realizing exponential value in all the ROI based on the use cases that they are implementing is companies who have actually understood how to empower different parts of the businesses with the same data sets and same data stores. So now that we have laid out the simple concepts that we are going to achieve infrastructure simplification, we are going to achieve data liquidity, we are going to achieve federated data governance with the focus on empowering all the business users and anyone who touches the data to be working on the same data foundation. If we can achieve all of these goals with a strong data foundation, like I said, this is going to be a massive win, and I'm pretty confident that you are going to get value from this conversation across all these different critical elements that we talked about. So number one, as I mentioned to you, is it's all about data governance, which is about having a singular view of all the data assets that you have across multiple parts of the organization. We know that, as I mentioned to you, in the last 10 years' time, our data environment has become so complex. And on an average, as I mentioned to you, that most of the companies have about 800 copies of the same data set. Now, the problem is that unless we identify all these data sets, unless we identify the redundancy and solve for it, which copy of the same data that we are going to train the AI model on, and number two, what is going to be the most reliable data set out of all 800 copies of the same data that we are working on. So in order to address all these critical basic fundamental challenges within the organization, it is extremely important that we need to have a platform that provides, number one, a singular view of all the data assets that you have, so that, number one, you can actually catalog all the data assets that you have within your organization, and leveraging automation, you can actually resolve for all the redundancy that you have across the entire data sets. And number two, you can actually apply lineage as well, so that when a copy of data lands in your organization, you also know that how it is actually getting morphed into other copies of the data sets too. So the basic principle is this: unless you identify the data set, unless you classify them, you cannot apply the data policy about who gets access to it, how you actually serve up all the models, all the data to your AI models, and what type of data goes to AI models and everything else. This is the most fundamentally important part of the equation. And we believe that Microsoft Purview can actually move your maturity curve in a big way. We know most of the customers who have been actually leveraging Purview platform in the recent times have experienced a surprising and more significant boost in the features increase in Purview platform in the recent times. And I highly encourage you to take a look at how you can leverage this platform for your data governance needs. Now comes the second most important thing, which is about the data foundation. So this is it. In order to understand the data foundation, it is extremely important for me to provide the context again on this one. So back in late 2000s and in early 2010, we know that the entire industry was on fire with Hadoop. And the promise of Hadoop was that customers can actually store all data in a much more cost-effective manner in a single place. And that's the promise of Hadoop. But we know that it never panned out to be that way, primarily because, one, Hadoop clusters were very complex, and the innovations were happening so rapidly. In order to keep up with all the updates and security and all the functions and features, it became much more expensive process for the customers. That's number one from complexity standpoint. But the idea of having all data in one place never worked out, primarily because the nature of how we all work are fundamentally across different geographies, and each and every part of the organization that functions in a particular geography is actually governed by the local governance and local compliance requirements. So the idea of having all data in one place never worked out. So when Microsoft, but we know that in order to train an AI model, in order to apply AI models on a single data sets, Microsoft clearly understood that you need to have one single copy of the data when it is possible. And if you cannot have all data in one single place, at least you should have a data virtualization layer and other set of capabilities that gives you access to wherever the data that sits in. So in order to achieve that, we embrace the principle of one lake with the capabilities of both shortcuts and mirroring. So number one, we all know this. Anybody who have listened to the story of Microsoft Fabric knows that one lake is actually an out-of-the-box storage that every single one of our customers will get for all their enterprise needs. Just like how we all have our Azure OneDrive for our personal data, every single one of our organization who uses Fabric today will have one lake for all their data storage needs. But the beautiful thing about one lake is not just the storage, out-of-the-box storage, but it's the virtualization layer that is built on top of it to provide the ability for customers to shortcut the data and mirroring capabilities as well. So what I mean by that is, we know that most of our customers are multi-cloud customers by choice, and also because they grow inorganically by acquiring other companies who happen to have data sets in other clouds as well. It is nearly impossible for all customers to bring data from all other cloud platforms into Azure or any other way as well. So the way that we are trying to solve for is by leveraging this functionality called Shortcut, simply where sitting in Azure Data Foundation, you can actually create a desktop shortcut to all the data that is sitting in other clouds as well, so that without compromising the security and all the compliance protocols of your organization, your users and your applications will be able to use all the data sets that are actually sitting across multiple clouds as well. That's number one. And number two, it is critical that we wanted to provide a hot sync capability through what we call it as a mirroring. So any data, we know that majority of our customers have got digital applications that are actually supported by a lot of data stores like MongoDB, Cassandra, and Cosmos DB, and various SQL Server, and a lot of other data stores as well, and databases as well. So number one is that we know that data that actually sits on our data store and databases must be made available in OneLake on a hot sync basis, so that the AI models will be able to leverage it on demand basis as and when you are training the model. So from that standpoint, we created the capability as part of OneLake. We created the mirroring capability by default, so that any data that's coming into your infrastructure through MongoDB or Cosmos DB or SQL Server can be in hot sync mode coming into your with the change data capture into OneLake as well. And in order to do that, I'm going to play a demo. So when you look at the demo, what you will understand is that how easy it is to create shortcut to all the data assets that's sitting across in multiple data environments in multiple clouds, and also about how you can actually mirror all the data that is coming into your digital infrastructure to OneLake in no time. So let's play the demo right now.
We've seen how every workload in Fabric can work with the same one copy of data when it is in OneLake. But we don't always want to copy data or build and maintain complex ETL processes, especially if we have existing investments we want to leverage. Contoso Outdoors is a classic example of this. If we look at where Contoso Outdoors is storing and managing their data, you can see that they, like a lot of organizations, have data everywhere. In Snowflake, there's the customer loyalty program. Azure Databricks has the sales data. Dataverse has the customer support systems. Cosmos DB has the retail order tracking. And we can get our product inventory and our product catalog from Amazon S3 buckets. With Fabric, we're going to create a new lakehouse where we can access all of these sources in a single unified location that is always in sync to the underlying systems with zero ETL. Let's start with our data in Azure Databricks. We can create a shortcut directly to the data since Fabric natively works with the data in Delta Parquet format. I just provide the connection information, and just like that, I can now access the data through OneLake and Fabric with zero data movement. I can do the same thing with Dataverse and Amazon S3, and if I jump ahead, you can see the data from each of the sources here. And you can see we've created shortcuts to more than just tables of data. We also created shortcuts to the images from our product catalog and to text documentation files for our products. We can also use these for building solutions in Fabric or for other services like Azure AI Studio, so they can access the data through OneLake. Next, we're going to bring in our data from Snowflake and Cosmos DB. For these sources, we're going to use Fabric's new database mirroring capability. Database mirroring automatically reflects data from Snowflake directly into OneLake and keeps it in sync with every change. This means my customer loyalty program from Snowflake can be accessed seamlessly in Fabric with zero ETL, and it's always kept in sync automatically by Fabric. Once the mirroring is set up and running, my data is ready to be used across every workload in Fabric. I've also set up mirroring to Cosmos DB, and just like my Snowflake data, it's being reflected into Fabric and kept in sync and ready for me to use. Let's go back to our lakehouse. Now I have the data from all 5 different clouds integrated in minutes into a single unified lakehouse in Fabric. With one click, I can switch to the SQL endpoint in Fabric, and I can write a single SQL query that joins data from each of the 5 different clouds, showing how I can work with all of this data in a unified way. If we switch over to the lineage view, you can see this even more clearly. We have a full view of downstream and upstream lineage, and we can see the Snowflake, Azure Databricks, Dataverse, Amazon S3, and Cosmos DB data all coming together and ready for my organization to use. For example, here we've created a machine learning model to predict demand and inventory levels for the upcoming holiday season. We also have Power BI for reporting on the data. Let's open up this report that shows order status for our loyalty program members. This report is using Power BI's Direct Lake mode, so all the data is always up to date, and I can slice and dice the data with blazing fast performance. Since the data is all coming from one copy in OneLake, it also means we can deploy one security model for the data that flows through all these solutions. We can see the sensitivity label flowing through to every downstream artifact, along with any data level security we apply. And finally, if I switch over to the Purview Hub in Fabric, I can see a complete view of all of our data assets. This helps me understand data sensitivity, endorsement, and usage of all my Fabric items. As you've seen, Microsoft Fabric is a game changer for enabling organizations to create a unified data estate, spanning all of their data and supporting every analytics workload in one easy-to-use experience.
Now that we have actually seen the demo, it is super clear that anytime when I have actually played this demo into a live audience, I always follow up with a question that I ask the audience about, do they know how long it will take to create such an infrastructure? And the typical answer that I always get anytime when I talk to the customers is that they assume that it will take about weeks and months to get to this point. But what you will be really surprised is that with Microsoft Fabric, you can actually test run this whole environment in less than few seconds, and you can focus on getting value from your data in minutes. And that's the simplicity that we have actually brought in with Microsoft Fabric. Now, so far, we have looked at all the data that is actually sitting at rest in multiple cloud environments, and also one part of the equation, which is about data that is actually coming into your infrastructure through the digital infrastructure, through the databases, and also through the data stores. Now, when we are talking about second one, which is about creating a data management layer, one of the most important things that we need to focus on is about the data that is actually coming through all the ERP and SEM applications. We know that every single one of our customers use one form of either SAP or Oracle in their environment. So we know that ERP data is one of the most critical data that customers will want to have access to all at the same time. Because of this competing need to have access to the same data sets all at the same time, all the internal organizations, most of the time, what we have seen is to build their own ingestion infrastructures, their own data standardization tools with the data quality tools and access provisioning and everything else. In fact, this is one area where we have seen contributing to majority of the both data and also the tools proliferation across the entire organization. So as part of the data foundation, as part of modernizing the data, we want to make sure that we address this critical problem as well. So what we have actually built in is that working with partners, critical partners who are actually system integration partners with Microsoft, we have created a lot of the accelerators, the partner IPs, leveraging partner IPs. We have created industry accelerators so that, number one, you don't ask internal organizations to develop their own ingestion services for either push-pull or for creating data agnostic, metadata-driven infrastructure and all that stuff. Basically, all the tools that the individual businesses would need to make sense of the ERP data from the time they ingest until the time how they actually leverage and consume across the different parts of the business. Every single accelerator that they need is actually available as part of the data management practice. Now, we talked about two important parts. One is about the data gravity from the data foundation side. Then we talked about the data management. Now comes the consumption layer. So as I mentioned to you in the beginning itself, the more we empower our business users with a seamless access to data, seamless access to quality data, that's when we are actually going to have great insights about the business that we need to operationalize on AI. And that is the use cases that is going to have profound and scalable impact within your organization. From that standpoint, what we have done is to enable keeping the business users in mind. We have simplified from the entire infrastructure side, we have simplified the whole access. So from that standpoint, think about a future where you can actually, with a single click of a button, you can actually provision all the domains, individual domains for each and every parts of the business, from finance, marketing, operations, and HR. And with all the workspaces that the individual business users would need, with all the tools and also the same data access, without compromising your enterprise requirements like security and governance and all that. And with Microsoft Fabric, you can actually achieve that with just a single click of a few buttons as well. So our idea is simple. As I mentioned to you in the beginning itself, that one, we wanted to remove all the legacy data systems and bring all the infrastructure simplicity as part of your data modernization. From that standpoint, we know that Microsoft Fabric can actually help you to simplify all of your data estate by removing about at least different tools all the way to test and every tool in between that they need. And all of this will be available in a single domain in a single workspace. And the number 2 goal that we talked about is that anyone who touches the data should be working on the same data set, on the same data foundation. And Azure AI Studio built on OneLake, you will be able to simply achieve this goal where from data all the way developer, anyone who touches the data will be working on the same set of data that your organization has. So imagine the complexity that we are trying to solve for. With Microsoft Fabric, we are simplifying the whole data estate by removing multiple different compute engines to support multiple different workloads. With the AI Studio, you have the extensive capability to leverage all models as a service across all the entire model family. And number 2, whether you are actually orchestrating AI models, you can actually do that in the AI Studio. And Microsoft Purview can actually be the singular data governance tool that provides you a singular view of all the data assets that you have across the entire organization. And like I said, all this can be done with OneLake, with additional capability, not just as a single enterprise storage, but with the additional capabilities to connect to all the data sources across multiple cloud and also across multiple digital data environments as well. So our idea is simple, that when we are thinking about Azure Data Foundation, we wanted to make sure that we address those critical things, which is about infrastructure simplification, creating the data liquidity with a single source of truth, and federating the data governance. And we talked about how you need to create a virtuous cycle about business users coming up with the insights that should be operationalized on AI when it comes to operationalizing AI use cases. And in fact, this is one of the fundamental requests that we have seen from our customers, that the customers who have adopted AI in the last 1 year time, they're all looking to see how they can exponentially increase the value of all the AI use cases that they have operationalized on certain industry standard use cases. And we are trying to address that in this one. And finally, that Microsoft is a technology company. And with these 3 platforms, Microsoft Fabric, Azure AI Studio, and Microsoft Purview, we can actually move the maturity curve in your data estate modernization journey in a big way. But while we are saying that, we are also modest and humble enough to understand that a technology solves only 10% of the problem. 90% of the problem will be still related to people, process, culture, and all that. So while we are cognizant that a data estate modernization and achieving a data-driven business is a continuous iteration and a continuous journey that is going to evolve, over a period of time, which we are no exception to. Within Microsoft, we have been doing the same iteration and we are on the same journey for the last 10 years' time. I'm pretty confident that starting with these 3 technology as a platform will help you to address the most critical challenges that you as an organization would face from the technology foundation side of it. All right, we have come to an end, and that's all the time we have for us today. I would love to hear your feedback on the session that I just provided. please let us know your thoughts by following the link in the chat window that I have posted right now. Thank you for your time. Thank you for paying attention to my session. And I really look forward to listening to your feedback.
Thank you.
Have
very
a great
much.
time.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this digital event.